You've been lying to us from the beginning. Now's your chance to come clean. What really happened the night Emily died? David's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head, his voice trembling as he spoke. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he whispered. I swear I didn't. Morgan leaned forward. Then tell me the truth. Start from the beginning. David took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Emily found out about the affair, he admitted. She confronted me that night. She was furious. We fought, and she said she was going to leave me, take the kids and everything. What happened next? Morgan pressed. I lost it, David said, his voice breaking. I grabbed her arm to stop her from leaving, but she pulled away and fell. She hit the lamp on the way down. I didn't mean to hurt her. It was an accident. Morgan's expression didn't soften. David, Emily didn't die from falling. She was strangled. That wasn't an accident. Someone put their hands around her neck and killed her. Was it you? David's face went pale. No, it wasn't me, he insisted. After she fell, she got up. She was crying, and I left the room to cool off. When I came back, she was already on the floor. I don't know what happened. Morgan didn't believe him, but she also knew his story introduced another possibility. If David wasn't in the room when Emily died, who else could have been? The discovery of Ryan's fingerprint on the broken lamp made him a critical piece of the puzzle. Morgan called him back for another round of questioning, this time armed with evidence that placed him at the crime scene. Ryan, Morgan began, her voice firm. You told us you hadn't been at the Cooper house for weeks, but that's a lie. We found your fingerprint on the lamp. You were there the night Emily died. Start talking. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw tightening. Fine, he said, his voice low. I was there, but only because David called me. He sounded panicked and begged me to come over. I didn't know why until I got there. What did you see when you arrived? Morgan asked. Ryan hesitated, his hands gripping the edges of the table. Emily was already dead, he said finally. David told me they had fought, and things got out of hand. He was freaking out, saying he didn't know what to do. He asked me to help him make it look like an accident. Morgan's stomach turned. Did you help him? No, Ryan said quickly. I told him he was on his own. I wasn't going to be part of that. I left and told him to deal with it himself. Why didn't you tell us this sooner? Morgan asked, her voice cold. Because he's my brother, Ryan said, his voice cracking. I didn't want to believe he could do something like this. But I didn't kill Emily, I swear. Detectives turned their attention back to Claire Reynolds. While David and Ryan's stories painted her as a background figure, the discovery of her necklace in the Cooper bedroom suggested otherwise. Confronted with the mounting evidence, Claire's carefully constructed alibi began to crumble. Claire, Morgan said during the interrogation, we know you weren't home that night. We have your necklace, we have phone records, and we have witnesses who saw someone matching your description near the Cooper house. It's time to stop lying. Claire's face went white. She stammered, searching for an explanation. I didn't kill her, she said desperately. Yes, I was there, but only because David asked me to come over. He said he needed to talk. What did he say when you got there? Morgan asked. He told me he and Emily had fought, Claire said, tears streaming down her face. He said it was over between them, that she was going to leave him. I tried to calm him down, but then I saw her. I saw Emily on the floor. She wasn't moving. I panicked and ran. I didn't know what else to do. Morgan narrowed her eyes. If you didn't kill her, why was your necklace in the bedroom? Claire hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. I must have dropped it when I went upstairs, but I swear I didn't touch her. With conflicting stories from David, Ryan, and Claire, the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. Morgan and her team began to piece together a new theory. David and Emily's argument had escalated, leading to violence. Ryan, called in after the fact, may have tried to cover for his brother. Claire's presence added another layer of complexity. Had she come to help David, or was she an unwitting bystander? But one thing was clear: someone in this twisted triangle wasn't telling the full truth, and Morgan was determined to uncover it. October 19th, 1997, Bellevue Police Department Detective Rachel Morgan had enough evidence to paint a picture of the chaos that unfolded on the night Emily Cooper died, but there were still too many loose ends. David Cooper's partial confession, Ryan's admission of being at the house, and Claire's presence added layers of complexity to the case. Morgan knew one of them was lying, or worse, they were all guilty in some way. The pressure was mounting, and the truth was within reach. Morgan called David in for one last round of questioning. She was done playing games. This time, she laid all the cards on the table. "David, we've spoken to Ryan. We've spoken to Claire. Your lies are crumbling, and the evidence against you is overwhelming. We know about the argument, we know you left the house, and we know you called Ryan and Claire that night. What I don't know is why you think we'll believe this was all just an accident." David's face was pale, his hands shaking as he leaned forward. "It was an accident," he insisted, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted her to stop yelling, to stop threatening to leave me." Morgan pressed on. "David, you strangled her. That wasn't an accident. That's rage. That's murder. What happened after you killed her?" David shook his head violently. No, I didn't strangle her. When I left the room, she was alive. She was crying, but she was alive. I swear, Morgan wasn't buying it. "You expect me to believe that Ryan and Claire just happened to show up after Emily died? You called them, David. Why? Did you ask them to help you cover it up?" David hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I called Ryan because I didn't know what to do. I thought he could help me figure it out. I called Claire because I needed her. She's the only one who understands me." Morgan's stomach churned at his words. "So you admit you brought Claire into this mess after Emily died?" David nodded slowly. "Yes, but she didn't do anything. Neither of them did. It's all my fault. I ruined everything." But Morgan still had doubts. David's confession answered some questions, but left others hanging in the air. Detectives turned their focus back to Ryan Cooper. They knew he was holding something back, and with David's partial confession, it was time to press him harder. "Ryan," Morgan began, her voice firm, "we know David called you after Emily was dead. What we need to know is what you did when you got there. Did you touch Emily? Did you help stage the scene?" Ryan shifted in his chair, his hands clenched into fists. "I told you I didn't touch her," he said, his voice low. "When I got there, David was freaking out. He kept saying, 'I messed up, I messed up.' He asked me to move the lamp to make it look like she fell, but I couldn't do it. I told him he was on his own." Morgan leaned in, her tone sharp. "But your fingerprint was on the lamp, Ryan. You did touch it." Ryan's face turned red. "Fine, I moved it. But that's all I did. I swear, I didn't touch Emily. I didn't kill her." Morgan studied him carefully. His story was plausible, but it still didn't explain why Claire's necklace was in the bedroom. Claire Reynolds was the last piece of the puzzle. Her involvement had been murky from the start, but the discovery of her necklace in the Cooper bedroom suggested she'd been closer to the crime than she was willing to admit. This time, Morgan went straight for the jugular. "Claire, we know you were at the Cooper house that night. We know David called you, and we know your necklace was found in the bedroom. If you didn't kill Emily, then why were you there? And why is your necklace in the room where she died?" Claire's composure crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she finally confessed. "I went there because David begged me to come. He said he needed me, that things had gone wrong with Emily. I didn't know what he meant until I got there." "What did you see when you arrived?" Morgan asked, her voice steady. "I saw her," Claire whispered. "She was lying on the floor, and David was just standing there, staring at her. He said she fell, but I knew he was lying. He asked me to help him clean up, but I couldn't. I panicked and ran upstairs. That's when I must have dropped my necklace." Morgan frowned. "Why did you go upstairs?" "I don't know," Claire cried. "I wasn't thinking. I just wanted to get away. I couldn't handle it. I left as fast as I could." Her story matched parts of David's and Ryan's, but it still didn't answer the central question: who had killed Emily? After hours of piecing together the conflicting stories, Morgan had a theory. David and Emily's fight had turned physical, and in a fit of rage, David strangled her. Panicking, he called Ryan and Claire to help him cover it up, but neither of them had the nerve to go through with it. To solidify her case, Morgan ordered one final round of forensic testing on Emily's body. When the results came back, they revealed something shocking. Skin cells from under Emily's fingernails matched David's DNA. She had fought back, scratching him as he strangled her. This was the evidence Morgan needed. October 21st, 1997. The arrest. David Cooper was arrested for the murder of his wife, Emily. The evidence was undeniable. The argument, the phone calls, the fingerprint, the DNA. He had killed Emily in a fit of rage and tried to cover it up by calling his brother and mistress to help him stage the scene. Ryan Cooper and Claire Reynolds were not charged with any crimes. While their actions were questionable, there was no evidence they had directly participated in Emily's death or its cover-up. They were, however, called as key witnesses in David's trial. As Bellevue braced for the trial of the decade, the town was left reeling. The Coopers had been the picture of perfection, a family everyone admired. Now their story was a cautionary tale of lies, betrayal, and the deadly consequences of unchecked emotions. February 9th, 1998, Bellevue County Courthouse. The trial of David Cooper began amidst a media frenzy. Bellevue, a town that rarely saw headlines beyond high school football scores, now found itself in the national spotlight. Reporters crowded outside the courthouse, and residents debated every detail of the case in diners and church halls. The trial promised to uncover the full truth about Emily Cooper's tragic death and the secrets that tore a family apart. David Cooper was charged with second-degree murder, and the prosecution wasted no time painting him as a man consumed by desperation and rage. The affair, the argument, the DNA evidence, each detail came together to form a damning narrative. District Attorney Carol Langford, a seasoned prosecutor known for her commanding presence in court, began her opening statement with a chilling line. David Cooper didn't just betray his wife. He killed her when she confronted him with the truth. Langford outlined the prosecution's case, starting with the Coopers' seemingly perfect marriage and the affair that shattered it. She walked the jury through the timeline, highlighting the evidence, the argument overheard by neighbors, the DNA under Emily's fingernails, and the calls to Claire and Ryan after her death. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the note Emily had written, which detectives found crumpled in the trash. It read, "We need to talk about Claire. I can't keep pretending everything's okay." Langford argued that this note was the catalyst for the argument that escalated into violence. Langford also called Claire Reynolds and Ryan Cooper to the stand. Though both admitted to being at the house that night, they denied any involvement in Emily's death. Their testimonies painted David as a desperate man who had called them after the fact, begging for help. "David told me he messed up," Ryan testified, his voice shaky. "He asked me to move the lamp to make it look like an accident, but I couldn't do it. I left." Claire's testimony was equally damning. "He said Emily was gone," she said tearfully. "He begged me to help him, but I didn't know what to do. I panicked and ran." Finally, the prosecution presented the forensic evidence. The DNA under Emily's fingernails was a critical piece of the puzzle, proving that she had fought back against her attacker. This wasn't an accident, Langford told the jury. This was murder. David Cooper's defense attorney, Michael Caldwell, argued that Emily's death was not premeditated murder, but a tragic accident. He claimed that David had pushed Emily during the argument, causing her to fall and hit the lamp. The strangulation, Caldwell suggested, was not deliberate, but the result of David trying to restrain Emily as she fought back. David Cooper is not a murderer, Caldwell said in his opening statement. He is a man who made a terrible mistake in the heat of the moment. The defense leaned heavily on David's remorse, portraying him as a loving husband who had been overwhelmed by the unraveling of his marriage. Caldwell called character witnesses, including some of David's colleagues and neighbors, who described him as a dedicated father and community member. But the defense struggled to counter the forensic evidence and the damning testimonies from Ryan and Claire. Every attempt to shift the blame fell flat, leaving the jury to wrestle with the undeniable facts. On March 3, 1998, after 4 weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. The courtroom was packed, the tension so thick it was nearly suffocating. David sat at the defense table, his head bowed, while Emily's family filled the front row, clutching tissues and holding hands. The foreperson stood, her voice steady as she read the decision. We, the jury, find the defendant, David Cooper, guilty of second-degree murder. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. David slumped in his chair, his face pale and expressionless. Emily's sister, who had attended every day of the trial, burst into tears, her sobs echoing in the silent room. Judge Margaret Henson addressed the court before announcing the sentence. This is a tragic case that has left a family and a community forever changed. While the court acknowledges Mr. Cooper's remorse, the facts of this case cannot be ignored. David Cooper was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The verdict brought some closure to Emily's family, but the scars of her death ran deep. Her 2 children, Lily and Max, were taken in by Emily's sister, who worked tirelessly to give them a stable home. Emily's name became a rallying cry in Bellevue, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked emotions and the ripple effects of betrayal. Claire Reynolds, though not charged with a crime, left Bellevue shortly after the trial. The affair had destroyed her reputation, and she sought a fresh start in a new town. Ryan Cooper also moved away, unable to escape the whispers and side eyes from a community that blamed him for not stepping in sooner. David Cooper, once a respected businessman and loving father, began his prison sentence in solitude. In letters to his children, he expressed deep regret for his actions, though many believed his remorse came too late. In the years that followed, Bellevue worked to heal. Emily's memory was honored with a scholarship fund for young women pursuing careers in education, a fitting tribute to her legacy as a beloved kindergarten teacher. The community came together to support Lily and Max, ensuring they had the love and guidance their mother would have wanted for them. For Detective Rachel Morgan, the case left a lasting impression. She had solved many crimes in her career, but this one stood out, not just for its complexity, but for the devastating human toll it took on everyone involved. Years later, when asked about the case, Morgan would say, "It wasn't just about catching a killer. It was about understanding how lies, betrayal, and unchecked emotions can spiral into tragedy. It's a lesson I'll never forget." March 2023, final reflection. 25 years later, David Cooper applied for parole. Emily's sister and children attended the hearing, now grown and carrying the weight of the tragedy with them. Max, now in his early 30s, addressed the board directly. "My mother didn't deserve to die," he said, his voice strong. "The choices my father made shattered our family. But I believe in forgiveness, and I believe my mother would want us to move forward. That's why I ask you to show mercy." David was granted parole, though he left prison as a broken man. Bellevue, however, had long since moved on, remembering Emily Cooper not for the tragedy of her death, but for the warmth, kindness, and light she brought into the lives of everyone she touched. Her story remains a haunting reminder of how quickly a life can unravel and how far-reaching the consequences of betrayal and rage can be.